I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 187, Unlearning. Hello, my lady. If you have a spouse that is struggling with a pornography problem, then you are in the right place. My name is Jolene Wynn, and I am a life coach, a member of the LDS faith, and the wife of a former porn addict. And in this podcast, I am going to teach you how to change the way that you are affected by your husband's choices. We can't change him, but what we can do is change the way that you respond when he makes the decisions that he does. I'm going to teach you how to manage your brain, how to process all of the emotions that seem so overwhelming to you so that you can finally live a life where you aren't living in fear of triggers and relapses. And by learning how to manage your mind and process your emotions, you are no longer going to be running on an emotional roller coaster, but you are going to start feeling so much more in control of your life no matter what your husband is doing. And I'm going to teach you all of that on this podcast. I can't wait to get started with you, and I'm so glad that you are here. I promise you, you're in the right place. Hello, my ladies. How are you? I hope you guys are having a wonderful holiday season. I am loving how long it is, and I am loving all of the things that we get to do. This weekend was super relaxed. Which was nice. I got really sick, and so I am on the tail end of my sickness, which is good. And hopefully that means I won't get sick over Christmas break. But my parents are coming, and this week is full of Christmas parties and dinners with friends and date nights and cookie exchanges. And my parents are coming next week, and it is just the kickstart of the Christmas, and I am very excited for it. So I hope you guys all are loving it. If you guys are struggling with it, go listen to last week's episode. Last week I talked about how to handle the holidays and actual tips that you can use to help you, especially because it's been coming up a lot in our coaching calls inside my coaching program that people have brought up things that they're struggling with, how everything seems so stressful and they have so much to do. And ladies, if that's you, I just want to offer just to remember that everything is optional. Ladies, if you feel like you have spread yourself too thin, there's a reason that phrase is called you spread yourself too thin. No one else is doing it for you, and it is okay to say no to things. So go listen to last week's episode if you need some help with handling the holidays, okay? I also wanted to let you guys know that this week on Thursday, I am doing a free coaching call on December 14th at 11 a.m., and this is a webinar because what I've been seeing is a lot of you saying, okay, well, how am I supposed to be okay if my husband is watching pornography, if I'm not okay with my husband watching pornography? And that is what this webinar is all about. The title of this webinar is called Porn is Not Okay, and you don't have to be okay with it. And that's what I'm going to be talking about, how to be okay if your husband is watching porn, even if you're not okay that he's watching porn or with him watching pornography. That's what I'm going to be discussing in this webinar. You can go to my website, jolenewynn.com, go to the Coach Week tab. You will find all the information there. You can register for free, and you will also get access to the replay. So if you can't come live, go ahead and sign up anyway, and you will be able to watch the replay. But again, I would love for you to come live so that you can ask me your questions. I always stay on the call so that I can answer anything that comes up for you. I can help you apply it to your situation. And again, that's this Thursday, December 14th at 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, I have a special announcement, which is that anybody that joins my coaching program this month, I'm going to send you a Christmas present. So if you've been thinking about joining my program, now is the perfect time, not only because then you'll finally be able to actually get yourself something for Christmas, but you will also be able to have a gift under the tree. So once you sign up, again, you can just go to my website, jolenewynn.com. I will send you a Christmas present, and it's already wrapped, and it'll be ready for you to just stick under your Christmas tree to open on Christmas morning, and I promise you will love it. Okay, today I want to talk about unlearning. This is a concept that I have been talking about with my clients for several months. I introduced it to my clients at the in-person retreat in October, and then I did a deep dive into this, specifically talking about unlearning beliefs in the Becoming Unbreakable Masterclass that I just did inside my program just a few weeks ago. So it has been on my mind a lot, and it is a tool that I want to teach you guys so that you can use it to change the thoughts that you're having, the feelings you're having, the responses you're having that feel automatic, the responses that you don't like, the almost habitual, almost reflex. I'm going to talk about that in another podcast, but almost like these emotional reflexes that we have of as soon as somebody says this one thing, or as soon as my husband says this thing in this tone of voice, I almost have no control over how I respond. So this is a tool that I want to explain to you guys in a little bit today to kind of help you in those situations. Okay. So let's talk about unlearning. It is possible for you to unlearn in the same way that you learned. Okay, so how do we learn things? We learn things through study and through experience or by someone teaching us. And what's fascinating is that there are some things that we come to earth just knowing, okay? Like our body knows how to breathe, okay? It's a reflex that is amazing. God created our bodies and designed them in a way to work in a beautiful way. We have a sucking reflex that allows us to swallow, but we have to learn how to chew. We have to learn how to stand up. We have to learn how to gain control of our muscles, even just wiggling our fingers. We have to learn how to go to sleep when we want to go to sleep. Okay, think about all of the things that we have to learn that as an adult we just take for granted because we've been doing them for so long. Most of the things that we do throughout the day, we had to learn. We learned how to speak. We learned how to form words. We learned how to put words together in order to communicate. We learned how to communicate without words even before we had words. We learned how to read. We learned how to communicate in writing. We learned what kind of music we like. All of these things that we just take for granted as an adult, all of those things were conscious efforts once upon a time. Okay, so here's the way that this applies now. In the same way that we had to learn the way that we are now, the things that we do, we had to learn the thoughts that we think and the beliefs that we have and the responses that we take. Okay, the way that we respond is a learned behavior. It is not something that we don't have control over. Now, it might feel instinctual. It might feel like we no longer have control over it because we've been doing it for so long. But at one point, anything that we wanted to learn took conscious effort. Okay, think about anything that you've ever learned to do as an adult. Maybe you've learned an instrument or maybe you've learned another language. That takes conscious effort. It takes study. It takes focus. It takes repetition. It takes someone showing you what to do. Think of learning how to drive a car, right? Even though now as an adult, when you get into your own vehicle that sits in the garage, it's very second nature. We don't even really think about it. Oftentimes we'll get halfway to wherever we're going and we'll be like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even realized I'm driving. Like I need to pay attention and focus, okay? We just go on autopilot. But think about how different it is, even just for a split second, if you're in a rental car, right? Even just for a split second, because you're not in your regular vehicle, you're like, all right, let me just make sure because I'm in a different car. Where are my wipers? Where's my blinker? Is the drive, like, is the shift, somewhere else, and we just, you adjust your mirrors and you just take a second to consciously become aware of things. Okay. That is what we need to do when we want to unlearn the patterns in our brain. Okay. So here's what I want to offer is that when we unlearn something, the first thing that we want to do is notice that it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. When you become aware of something that you want to unlearn, and that's the first step. Look, I'm getting ahead of myself, right? The first thing you want to do if you want to unlearn something is to identify what it is that you want to unlearn. During my Becoming Unbreakable masterclass that I was teaching, we did a day of this, and it was something that I encouraged them to do on the very first day of the class. We did it for a whole week. On the first day of the class, I said, what is it that you want to focus on this week? Is there something you believe about yourself that you no longer want to believe? Is there an emotion that you keep hitting up against that you want to finally move past? And everybody identified kind of one thing, right? So that's what I want to offer here is you identify, is there something you want to unlearn? Is there a pattern in your relationship with your spouse that you want to unlearn? Is there a belief you have about yourself that you want to unlearn? Do you want to unlearn the belief that you're not good enough? Do you want to unlearn the belief that you have something to do with your husband's pornography problem? Do you want to unlearn the instinct to get defensive and argue whenever your husband walks in the door, right? What is it that you want to unlearn? Just start getting really curious about it and just let that question sit there in your mind. And maybe that'll come up to you as I'm talking in this podcast, okay? But that's the number one thing. The first thing you need to do is identify what it is that you want to unlearn. And again, recognize that it is possible to do so. Okay, because it's not something that's not within your control. It's not just how you're wired. It's not just the way things always have to be. All of it is a pattern and in a way that our brain has responded once upon a time consciously and now has just subconsciously responded in the same way because that's what it's used to doing. And that's great. It's wonderful that our brain has this ability. However, when those patterns are no longer serving us, which is whenever we're unhappy with them or the result that they're creating, then it's within our ability to change it. So is there something in your life you want to change? Is there something you want to unlearn? Maybe it's a habit. Is there a habit that you don't like that you want to unlearn? This is how you do it, okay? So first we have to identify what it is that you want to unlearn, recognize that it's possible to do it. And then number two, one of the things that I want to offer that can be so powerful is notice in the moment. If you just give your brain the job, I say this to my clients all the time. I say, okay, I want you to give your brain the job of just noticing whenever you do it. And when you give your brain that job, you just tell yourself, okay, I'm going to start noticing whenever I do this. It will start to do it. Your brain is a machine. It's fantastic in so many ways, and it will start noticing that. So for example, let's say you say, all right, one thing I want to change about myself, one thing I want to unlearn is the habit of talking bad about my husband to other women. Maybe that's something you want to unlearn. Okay, that's just an example. Okay, so then you say, okay, the thing that I'm going to do is start noticing when I'm doing it. Okay, and so that will be the thing that when you start to do it, if you notice yourself doing it, you give your brain that job and you notice, okay, I'm in this conversation. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm saying something and I notice myself doing it and I don't want to do it anymore. Literally tell your brain, stop. Okay, you can just tell your brain to stop and it will stop. Does that make sense? It will stop those negative thoughts. It will stop the pattern. All it does is it creates a break. It's like literally putting in the brakes on the car, hitting the brake instead of hitting the gas. It's been hitting the gas and all of a sudden you slam on the brakes. So it stops that pattern and you may have to do it over and over and over again. Your brain might say, no, this is when we go, and you say, no, stop. And you literally say stop to your brain in your thoughts, okay? Now, step number 3 is I want you to release all self-judgment. When we become aware of something that we want to change in our life, one of the worst mistakes that we can do is judge ourselves for it. I'm such a terrible person. I'm a horrible wife. I can't believe that I talk this way or that I think this way. I'm such a bad person for believing this about myself. All of that self-judgment, ladies, is like a trap door. All it does is it traps all of the negative emotion that we're trying to process inside of us, and it locks it. Okay, and there is no getting out. We need to release all of that self-judgment. That is something that I work on with my clients a ton because our brain really, you guys are good people, okay? You're wonderful, beautiful, good-hearted women, and you don't like the negative things that show up about yourself, and that's okay. But what I want to offer is that we can unlearn the habit of talking negatively about ourselves and thinking negatively about ourselves and believing negatively about ourselves when we become aware of something that we want to change. And instead of thinking that it's negative, instead of becoming and saying, oh my gosh, this is terrible, I can't believe I think this, you can unlearn that pattern and learn a new one. And learning the new one looks like compassion and saying, and curiosity. Compassion and curiosity are the biggest counterparts to self-judgment. You can have compassion for yourself for believing that way. One of the things that my coach always says that I love is she says that it's a practice of one of the phrases she uses and offers me all the time is I forgive myself for holding on to the misbelief of whatever it is. I forgive myself for believing this thing that I've been believing, and just giving yourself that compassion and saying, it's okay that I thought this. It's okay that I feel this way. It's not a problem. I don't have to stay there. And then just being super curious of what do I want to change it to? Why am I holding on to it? Is this something that I want to change? Yes or no? Okay. Releasing that self-judgment is what's going to enable you to change it and move forward. Okay, so step 1 is identify what you want to unlearn. Number 2 is stop yourself when you notice it happening. You can literally say stop. Number 3 is releasing all of that self-judgment. And number 4 is identify and process the emotional belief or attachment. Okay, the reason that we have a pattern in the first place is because it's serving us in some way. If I have a habit of talking negatively about my husband to other women, there's a reason that it's serving me. So this is where we can get really curious. If I let go, if I recognize myself doing it, I tell myself stop, I release all the self-judgment of how I'm a terrible wife and a terrible person and all of these things. And if I don't say anything, are these women going to think that I'm too good for them or that I have a perfect marriage? Or does it mean that I'm just pretending that everything's great and that I live in a Hallmark movie? If we release all that self-judgment, then we can say, okay, I need to process the emotional belief or where this is attached. Why am I holding on to this? Where do I want to keep this? Because part of me wants to keep it. If we have any thought or feeling or habit in our life, there's because part of us wants to keep it there. So we need to identify what that is. And it could be that it's attached to a belief that we've had for a long time. It could be that it validates our story. You can just ask yourself, why am I holding on to this? My husband likes to phrase it in this way. He says, what's it for? What is this for? What is this feeling for? What is this belief for? Why am I holding on to it, right? So you can ask yourself that question. And maybe the reason that you like the habit of talking negatively about your husband to other people is that it validates your story. Maybe you like the way that other women say, yes, you're right, your husband is a jerk. That was the wrong thing to do. He should have bought you coaching for Christmas, and he should have thought of it all by himself. Whatever it is, yeah, that was the wrong thing for him to do. And then it validates your story. The story where he's the bad guy, you're the good guy, you never get the recognition you want, etc. And that's wonderful. And that validation feels really good for a minute, but it's not actually creating the result that we want, right? So this step, number 4, is identifying where the pattern is attached. Is it attached to a belief? Is it attached to an emotion? It's attached somewhere. Is it attached to a story? Let's look at that and then process the emotion where it's attached, okay? Because part of us wants to keep it, and that's the part we need to process, okay? The pride, the hurt, the guilt for something. There's always going to be an emotion that's attached that just needs to be processed and let go, okay? And then the same with learning anything. Now we get to do the fun part, okay? So now as a part of unlearning, this is the process of unlearning, right? Identify what we want to unlearn, stop ourselves when we notice ourselves doing it, release the self-judgment, process the emotion of where it's attached. Then we get to do the fun part, which is we get to choose a new pattern. Okay, I love this part. This is probably my favorite part of coaching. This is the part where we get to start shifting things intentionally on purpose, where it's not just about becoming aware of the things that we don't want to change, but actually then taking action to change that, to move forward in a different direction, to actually create a different result. So you get to decide, okay, what is it that I want to do? I am now aware. I am processing all of the things. I don't want to talk negatively about my husband. So what do I want to do? Do I want to choose to just not say anything? Do I want to choose to focus on the positive things that he does? Do I want to insert saying something positive? Do I want to talk to the women around me and change the conversation? What is it that I want to do? Okay. How do I want to show up differently? And this is when you get to choose that. You get to choose a new thought, a new pattern, a new habit, a new belief, a new emotion, whatever it is, you get to choose a new one. And then the last step is to actively pursue that new pattern and thought. Does that make sense? I want to put this in terms of another kind of concept that I taught at the retreat, because I think it really kind of rounds this out and gives you a better idea of what I'm talking about when I talk about unlearning, okay? And this is what I call the algorithm of your brain, okay? I want you guys to think about social media, okay? So when I go on my Instagram feed, if I go to like the search engine and it has this whole, list of like suggested for you, here's what's fascinating is the algorithm will just suggest things that it thinks I'm interested in based on people I follow, posts that I've liked, things that I've shared, things that I post myself, etc. And it will give this whole kind of mix of things that it thinks that I'm interested in. Now, what's fascinating is that the algorithm learns very quickly what's important to you based on how much attention you give it. You don't even have to click on it. If you are scrolling through your phone, even just pausing and lingering, the algorithm is tracking how long you pause over a photo, over a caption, over a video, and it adds that into its algorithm to compute what it is that you are liking, what is capturing your attention. Okay, it's so fascinating. Okay, so what happens when the more I click on, clips from a show, let's say Friends, let's say I start clicking on clips from Friends, okay, then the more the algorithm is going to say, okay, she likes clips from Friends, we're going to add more of that into her feed. Okay, so at first it was just random. At first it was just a suggestion, in the same way that our brain sometimes just offers a thought as a suggestion. Right? But if we hold on to it and we pause and we say, oh, okay, I kind of like that thought, the more your brain is going to offer more of it. Okay. The more I tell Instagram, hey, I like to watch clips of Friends, the more clips of Friends are going to show up on my feed, until what happens is unintentionally, this is just happening, I start to recognize, I open my phone one day and it's just tons of clips of Friends, and I almost get frustrated. I feel like there isn't anything else on my feed. And I say, I don't even want this. Why is this only full of clips of Friends? Sometimes I want to see other things. And then I actually have to actively work to change the algorithm. Okay, I have to stop clicking on clips from Friends. I have to actively search for other things in order for the algorithm to relearn what it is that I want and give me something else. Does this make sense? And your brain works in the exact same way. You tell your brain what's important to you by what you listen to, by what you watch, by what you pay attention to, not just externally, but internally, okay? The emotions you hold on to, the thoughts that you keep repeating, the habits that you keep doing again and again and again, the interactions that you focus on. You are teaching your brain what is important to you. You are setting up the algorithm of your brain. And at first, it happens consciously. At first, you are choosing it on purpose. At first, when he comes in the door and he says something and you get upset about it, then you say, well, that was uncalled for. I'm feeling a little defensive and I think I'm going to push back a little bit, right? Or if we go with the example that I was doing before, is one day you might be talking with your girlfriend and you might say, I think I want to tell her about what happened last night with my husband because I want her opinion. And you start there. And you do it very consciously at first, and then all of a sudden you do that over and over and over, and eventually you get to the point where you don't even realize that that's what's happening. You've just recognized that now you have this result where you're in a group of women and you're talking negatively about your husband to everyone that's sitting there. Does this make sense? This is what we're telling our brain, and it starts to learn, and it starts to adapt, and it starts to spit out the things that we have taught it are important. Now, here's what is amazing, is your brain is not in charge on its own. Just like the algorithm on Instagram, it can offer things, but you are the one that can control it. You can manipulate it. Your brain is a computer. It is doing its job beautifully, but you're the one in charge, and you can tell it what to look for, and you can tell it what to spit out, and you can tell it all the things that you want. You can manage your own mind, and that's what you guys have been learning on this podcast, right? So as you are learning to manage your mind, this is when you can unlearn all of the algorithm settings that you have set up before. So even if you have been telling it, hey, I want to feel these things, I want to do this habit, I want to think these thoughts. Now you can unlearn it and redirect it. But the biggest difference is that it's going to take a lot of conscious effort. This is not something that's going to happen on its own. This is why I always say, if you want a new result in your life, you have to do things differently, and it's going to take conscious effort. And your brain is going to throw a massive tantrum. Okay? It's just going to throw a fit just like a toddler. Because remember, if you read my book, there's a chapter in there called Your Brain is a Lazy Teenager. And that's exactly what's going on. Your brain likes things to just go on its own because then it doesn't have to do any work. Then it just gets to hit the autopilot button and it doesn't have to do anything. It's like putting it on cruise control. And all of a sudden you take it off cruise control and you have to manually guide it. And your brain gets tired. And I understand that feeling for sure. Okay? But we have to be in charge of our brains if we want to start having a different result than we're having right now. Okay, which I'm guessing all of you guys do because you're listening to this podcast, right? You're already taking that step. You're already saying there's something that I want that's different than what I have. I want to search for an answer. That's how all of you guys found this podcast, right? So you're already doing it. Now we're just going to we're going to apply it not just externally, but internally, okay? Because what happens in that algorithm in your brain is that at first it all happens consciously, but your brain quickly learns and starts following the pattern without any input from you. And then it'll start suggesting similar things. So before you know it, right, it's years later, you spent your entire life running on suggestions of this algorithm. This is how things kind of tend to spiral. I see so many clients come to me at first and they say, I don't know how this happened, but all of a sudden I'm, aware of I've been picking up all of these clues and now everything he does annoys me. Have you guys gotten to this point yet? Okay. It's like, yeah, at first your brain says, oh, this one little thing is annoying. And you say that to your brain, oh, that one little thing is annoying. And then your brain starts to, oh, okay, this thing is annoying. Is that thing annoying? And it'll offer it to you. And you're like, well, a little bit. And so then it'll start to notice it more and more. And before you know it, you're like, everything he does annoys me. Okay. That's your brain responding to that algorithm. But again, if you practice unlearning, then you can completely change the habits, the thoughts, the patterns, the beliefs you have. Everything in your life has been learned. The way that you respond emotionally, cognitively, behaviorally has been learned, okay? And it has been adopted. And all of that is optional. And this is the best news I could give you, ladies, because this means that you are once again in control. You don't have to wait for things to change outside of you. You don't have to wait for circumstances to shift. If you want to create a different result in your life, you can. And one of the best tools that you can use is to unlearn. To unlearn the thoughts, the habits, the patterns, the beliefs, the emotions you hold on to, all of those can be unlearned. Your brain works for you, and you can tell it what to do. Make it work for you rather than against you. Be conscious of your attention. Be conscious of what you're studying, what you're taking in, what you are learning, and be conscious of what you're unlearning. And that is going to start giving you the biggest difference in your life and in your relationships. I love you ladies so much. I will see you guys next week on a brand new episode. So take care. All right, ladies, it's time to rise up and take charge of your healing, and I have the best way for you to do it. I have created a lifetime access coaching program that I have designed specifically for you and exactly what you're going through right now. This is where I help you develop a personal mastery of all the tools that you're learning here on the podcast in order for you to create a permanent change. Go to my website, joleneWynn.com. You will find all the information there, and you can sign up today, and we will start going forward. I can't wait to see you there.